Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Craig Pera. I am Craig Pera from the Mindful Habits System, and you're listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. So glad you're here. And obviously, if you've been paying attention, you know that we cover far more issues on this podcast than talking about your porn or your compulsive behavior. Why? To break a habit, you have to make a habit. You're obsessively focusing on not doing the thing is keeping you stuck, at least most of you, and holding you back. So today I have a very, very special guest, my brother from another mother. I want to tell you a little bit about him, and then we're going to dive into some really important information that you're going to need, not just you want, but you're going to need to help you proactively manage the holidays. So first, a little bit about George. George came to me at a low place. And I remember talking to this guy for the first time. He was on his mother's couch. His marriage was falling apart. And, I'll never forget that first call because there's something in my mind that went, now listen, I talked to a lot of people, right? Something in my mind went, this guy is special. This guy is special. This guy has a gift. Let's see if we can sharpen that saw, hone those gifts. And now he is a coach with the Mindful Habits System. He's got his own thing going on. He's been on the TD Jake show. He has been on just published a book that is a game changer because we need more information out there around habits, and it's an incredible resource. The name of the book is called Habitland, and we're going to be talking about that today. But it is such a privilege to be here with my main man, George Morning. What's happening, George?
Hey, brother, how's it going, man? I'm humbled. Thank you. I had to almost look around and figure out who you was talking about there. One quick small note, and this is just for everybody that's listening right now. Craig said he remembered the first time. That was actually the second time. The first time I got in contact with him was literally the year before in the summertime and decided to not get the help. And at that time, I had a wife and family. So just a little side note, don't go down a rabbit hole with that. But if there are any brothers listening right now that are thinking that you're on the fence about getting some help now versus getting it later, or maybe you don't need it, go ahead and get it. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, no, George. I mean, it's like it's like a trigger for me because I talk to somebody, right? I know there's a connection, and that connection, I know is so important. Or if you're listening to this podcast, that says that you connect, right? So that connection impacts efficacy. And it is so disheartening, and I know you've experienced professionally as well. A client calls you, there's a connection. There's no reason for them not to sign up, but you know what? Thanks for the great information. I'm going to do it myself. Mm-hmm. And a year later, 6 months later, I've done some tracking. 25% of those people call back, and 100% of those 25 are in a far worse spot. Hey. Than when they called the first time. So yeah, man, I forgot about that. I absolutely forgot about that. And speaking of being in a worse spot, right? The holidays are joyous. The holidays are festive. The holidays are fun. It is also the time when domestic violence increases, driving under the influence increases, disorderly conduct increases. So we just look at the criminal data for a second and assume that kind of spreads out into other areas of your life. You may not be getting arrested, but has the holidays put a stress on you that is making your compulsive behavior worse, that is impacting the relationship with your partner? And the reason for that is habits. And so, George, you wrote a book called Habitland, and I want to use some of those lessons in that book to help people break the habit of letting the holidays derail their recovery and make their lives worse. We want your lives to be better. That's why we're talking to you right now. But before we jump into that, George, what is Habitland? Why Habitland? Why did you go down that direction because I love it. Love it.
Great, man. Great. Well, Habitland, as you know, Habitland, just in terms of what it is, it's just that place that most of us actually already are. We just operate in a habitual zone. We tie our shoes, we walk out the door, we drive our car. But for me and a lot of other individuals, and I'll talk more about those other individuals, we spend far too much time in Habitland, and we just respond almost just out of our basal instincts. It's just about our ego, our emotions, our experiences. We let our thoughts run wild. They lead us almost seemingly automatically into where we find ourselves stuck with these compulsive behaviors. And for me, Habitland took a lot of different changes, man. I mean, it was one of the things where I was like, maybe it needs to be like an autobiography. And the more I learned about myself, the more I invested in just addiction recovery industry professionally. I realized that every last one of us has a different past, but we all end up in the same place. We all end up on the same calls. We all end up, looking at the same websites, trying to get help, trying to break this piece that has consumed this part of us, whether it's been exposed to our family and friends and our peers, or whether it's something we're still hiding right now in this time. And what I wanted to do was that I really just wanted to create something that just really answered the questions that I had in the beginning, that my wife had in the beginning, that even those around me that wanted to help me in the beginning. For my wife at the time, it was very much like, just fix it. Like, I don't understand this, just fix it. And I had no way of being able to really express in a real way what was going on. It was just a lot of blame. It was tons of deflecting, tons of gaslighting. It was almost so much reverse psychology that went into it, where I made her think it was about her all the time. And as I went through this process, and part of the beauty of us having this conversation right now around the holidays, just so everybody knows, we're in 2018 right now. It was literally 6 years and 1 month to the day that I woke up and I found my wife and my 2 youngest kids packed up at the front door leaving. So again, kind of put that in perspective, literally right before Thanksgiving, which I got to tell you, I spiraled out of control at that point in time. And bringing it back to Habitland, after I went through a lot of work and worked with Craig and worked with and went and did more training on myself and learning myself, and then decided to want to coach other men. When I put Habitland, and I've had the wonderful experience of not just talking to the addicts, if you will, but also their partners. And you realize from a different point of view that, there are answers on both sides that they just didn't know going into it. Like, I had no idea exactly what a habit was. I just really thought that, forget about how I feel about a certain thing. If I just get up and I do it, then this should be a great deal. But I always wondered why I always kept losing the job. And I always had a hard time maintaining employment, or why I felt these things around me just wasn't lasting long enough for the habit to take place. I wasn't able to connect the dots. I didn't realize that, these things were triggers. And by the way, man, we're not just talking about sexual triggers.
Yeah, no, good point.
When we begin to really look, especially now in the holiday season, I'm pretty sure a lot of us are going to be triggered, and don't have nothing to do with sex. It's the coldest season of the month, so that's not going to be the biggest thing. We're looking at now the engagements. We're looking at the relationships right now. We're looking at the change in life right now. I remember the first Thanksgiving I had to spend without my son, or my youngest son and daughter, and my wife. Like, sex was the furthest thing from my mind at that point in time, even though it was part of the action in what was displayed. Because what I had to learn was that there's a trigger that produces a thought, and then there's, guess what, an action. And the biggest part about the action is that even though everybody sees it, it normally gets the wrong diagnosis. So what I mean by that, when, again, before I knew what Habitland was, before I knew about habits, people saw George that was driving around from state to state, getting illegal drugs, prescription drugs. They saw George cheating on his wife. Wife saw George acting out the porn, not wanting to come to the bedroom. And at the end of the day, they say, well, look, you just need to handle that sex part. And men, that's just like you having a cough, and you say, oh, it's a cough. I'll go swallow some cough syrup. And the cough goes away, and you think you've actually solved the real problem. No, you just dealt with a symptom.
The behavior is the symptom. The behavior is the symptom. And what I love about Habitland, George, is you know, what's fun for me is when people realize that how much of their lives is truly impacted by habits. And it's like all of it. Duke scientists say we spend over 50% of our waking hours automatically, instantaneously, subconsciously repeating the same thing that we did yesterday. So, you know, Habitland is this place where we need to be in some sense, because
Absolutely.
you can't function without habits. You can't get
Absolutely.
out of bed in the morning without habits. And you know what I want you guys who are listening now, and our gals too, we know you're listening, is what habits, what does Habitland look like for you throughout the holidays, George? And what should some of the things that they should be thinking about? I love having people look at past holidays. You know, how did those go? What happened? Because
Exactly.
the chances are it's going to happen again. How do you coach around, get your guys ready for the holidays?
Holidays are a big thing, and we've doing a lot of talk around holidays, especially with the group calls. A lot of the one-on-one calls have revolved around just kind of creating this safeguard, if you will. This, you know, we'll just call it. It's really about emotional safety, you know, during the holiday season. You know, pretty much most of us aren't going to be feeling bad because someone is physically abusing us, if you will. You know, there's going to be a lot of emotional turmoil. And here's the important part right now is that I mentioned that it's emotional. So here's what's important for anybody that's listening right now going into the holidays. Your first thoughts, and we talk about it in the Mindful Habit, we talk about it in Habitland, but, you know, we say it all the time. First thoughts wrong, second thoughts right. And again, the reason why your first thoughts are going to be wrong is that the majority of your first thoughts is just instinctually related back to our emotions, our ego, and our experiences. So here's what happens with a lot of my guys. They'll end up reflecting on a past holiday, and they think about how great that holiday was, and now how great the holiday is not going to be coming up because of the discovery or the exposure that took place regarding their compulsive behavior. And the first thing I got to remind them is that, well, technically that wasn't a great holiday because that was covered in lies. Like if that was a holiday when your partner didn't know that you had a compulsive behavior, well, that's not exactly where you're trying to get back to. You know, that still wasn't a healthy holiday. It had a good outcome for you, but it wasn't a healthy way to process the holidays because you were still hiding during that point in time. So the biggest thing that I ask my guys to do first is to, number one, I want them to anticipate not what they think they're going to feel during the holidays. I want them to begin projecting how they want to feel by the end of the holidays. Yeah. And then I almost want them to be able to reverse engineer that process and say, okay, what needs to happen in order for me to feel happy at the end of Christmas? Like last year, Christmas, I was around the tree and my wife and my kids, and it was presents all around. And this Christmas, I found myself in a one-bedroom apartment, and my kids and my wife were in a whole nother state. And believe me, it's not an easy thing that's going to happen. Or it's a piece where you're going to go be around your family and you may not be with your spouse, or it's uneasy right now between you and your spouse. And that discord, that friction may seem a little bit more apparent now than it did in the previous years. You know, so go ahead. No, I think, you know, what it does, Joe, it sneaks up on people because, and I'm glad we're doing this podcast now, because every season I get to the end of the holiday season and say, I didn't do enough on preparing people. And, you know, that advice is so smart because we are creatures of habit. And by following George's advice and defining what do you want this season to look like for you? What do you want to extract? What do you want to take from it? And what do you want to give to it is going to help you find the delta, right? That's just a fancy letter for the difference between what you want your outcome to be to what it's been in the past. And if you want to look for some data in terms of where this holiday season is headed for you, you don't have to go any further than going backwards and looking at where the fights were,
Where did you lose agency and control? Was it the liquor that was flowing a little looser than it was during the other parts of the year? Was it stress? I get such anxiety, like panic attacks around buying presents because I'm projecting a belief system from my past that it'll never be good enough. And look back, right? So look back and identify your risks. Like, what are the risks that are going to hurt you coming up over the course of the next few days or the next few weeks? And it's really, I mean, let's just cut to the chase. It's risk management 101, right, George?
Yep.
I mean, this isn't anything fancy here. What bad things are going to happen? What are you going to do to prevent them from happening? What are some of the common problems that you find the guys get into in the holidays? What are some of the obvious pitfalls that they need to avoid?
Obvious pitfalls is, and here's the first one, and this is going to be, I won't say it's a tricky one, but it's about our relationships. You know, what I most find during the holiday season is, particularly for our men, is that we're almost thrusted into these relationships that we know we're going to feel uneasy, whether it's being around our parents for the holidays, being around the in-laws for the holidays, and again, not properly preparing for what that is. So there's really two pieces that come out of that. And again, I want to go back. We were talking about the habit cycle. One key piece ties directly into where we're at right now, what the mindful habit. And again, this is where I ask my guys, this is their time to be mindful. This isn't about good, bad. This isn't about right, wrong. This is about what is going to give you the healthiest and best outcome for you. That's it. We just need to look at that part of it. And when you're mindfully able to look at it and we kind of get past, again, men, a little bit of that ego, right? Sometimes that ego will have us in a place where it's like, you know what? I'm going to show up regardless. So what if the in-laws hate me? I'm still going to go ahead and show up and rah-rah. Or it might be even reverse, where we end up having low self-esteem. We want to curl up in a fetal position during the holiday season and not want to engage all these individuals and people. What I ask them to do is say, make a list and understand who are going to be the safe areas of communication for you during the holiday season. Number one, and again, especially if they're going.
Hold on, I want to footnote that, guys, because I want you to see a pattern, right? I love this. George he's always starting with focusing on the positive, right? Did you notice that theme here? I just want to highlight that point because it illustrates a very important point that we feel that you need to digest. You need to take that in. You need to eat it, let it come out, and don't keep eating that, but feeding yourself on this principle. And that came out weird. Yowza, that went off the rails. But guys, you know what I mean is that there's such an obsessive focus in this world, in our space, particularly around not doing the thing. That is the entirety of the 12-step model, and you're counting your days and declaring how many days you didn't do the thing. Mm-hmm. Our guys declare how many days, not only did they not do the thing, but what they did instead. So notice the pattern. First, you're focusing on what is it, in fact, you want to accomplish, right? And then I suggested looking back and looking at what you didn't want to accomplish, taking that historical data, and then George went right to, all right, where are your safe places? Keep going, man. I just wanted to highlight that trend.
No problem, brother, no problem. Now, even with the relationships being present, there has to be a reality of that. You know what? You're just going to think like crap majority of the season. And what I mean by that is that it is not almost an intentional thing. Again, we're going to get triggered. So for anybody that's dealing with a compulsive behavior, and even just a small segue here, you don't just have to be dealing with a compulsive behavior to have a crappy holiday season and want to improve it. You don't have to have a compulsive behavior to want to be able to better your life beyond where it is this certain moment right now. These principles exist on both sides of the spectrum, whether you're the addict in recovery or whether you're the 9-to-5 Joe Blow who wants to do better in his life. These are the same exact principles, man. So when we go back and we take a look at those thoughts, we know that there's going to be a trigger, right? And these are the things that, guys, look, you can't control it. I want you to accept the fact that this is the one thing you're not going to control. You'll be able to get a better handle on it later, but This is just about you being aware. You know what? Mother-in-law is a trigger. When you go and sit down at your table and you look to your left and your wife isn't sitting beside you, that's going to be a trigger. When there's not the sound of your kids in the home, or maybe you just lost your job kind of deal, like all these things are triggers. What the triggers are going to lead you to is the thoughts. Now, here's what's really key right now, and is that you have to understand what the thoughts are. For the most part, your thoughts are just going to be negative. You're going to have these self-deprecating thoughts where you're just going to feel like you're crap. I mean, men, listen, I've been there. I have my two youngest kids are right now literally on the opposite coast of the country. I went from being able to see them every day to being able to see them every month to now having to plan out when I get to see them. So I know what that's like, but you're gonna have those moments like, man, I'm a loser. I messed this up. I suck. You're gonna have self-doubt moments where you wonder if it's even worthwhile for you to even bother continuing. Like, man, should I even bother going down this road right here? Like, this is where my life is right now. I doubt it'll ever change any. You know, you may have some self-entitlement thoughts. You might be in a place of thinking that you're in such a deserving mode of the negative thing. But here's what's important. Your thoughts are your own. Like, you literally control your thoughts. If you listen to what I said about those thoughts, the first part of every last one of those thoughts, self-deprecating, self-doubt, self-entitlement, it starts with you. And then it's an awareness that has to be there that says that, you know what? I create my thoughts. And it's a great piece of literature out. It's actually two good pieces of literature. One is called Ownership. I got to get the name for it. I'm sorry. But it's another book also called High Performance Habits. And they both talk about this in the same dynamic, in that how a negative situation is happening. And one book is written by a Navy SEAL. Other book is written by a personal development guy, Brendan Burchard. But they both address it the same way, in that the event can still produce the emotion. But you have a choice over how you decide that emotion to translate into a feeling. They define a feeling as the mental interpretation of the emotion. So what does that mean? The first thought, you're going to be sad. There's going to be some sad moments. You're going to be angry. You're going to be flat out pissed off. You're going to be, yeah, there it is right there. One of the books right there. You guys, you just showed it right there. How to make
I'm gonna hold this up for you guys that are watching this on video. How to Make Shit Happen by Sean Whalen. Very, very high recommend category. This is a no bullshit, manual on how to improve your life. And while we're promoting, this one is too. You guys are seeing it backwards, but this is George's Habitland book. You can pick it up on Amazon, and we'll continue to talk about those principles. But the thing is about the thoughts, George, and we're so, and what I love explaining it this way. We're encouraging you to be mindful of your habits, and like, get it? That's the mindful habit. That's the secret sauce, because we need habits to function, and you're going to have these automatic, instantaneous reactions at the Christmas party. Maybe you've had a couple of drinks and all of a sudden the eyes are starting to wander, right? That's what happens to me. I'm just telling you guys, I know that's what happens to me. So I've got a 2-drink maximum. That's my rule. If Michelle is with me and we're out, maybe it'll be 3, but even 3 with Michelle with me, I noticed that neck is starting to get an exercise. So I'm aware of my limitations. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. Unmute.
Sorry about that, brother. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's the next part that I asked them. As a matter of fact, no matter when they come into the program, I ask this of them, especially starting a program, but particularly, again, during the holiday season. Because as you just stated, alcohol, and it's not saying that, hey, look, you had a couple of drinks and you started, look, your eyes wandering and maybe you're an alcoholic kind of person. No, that's not what we're saying. What we are saying, though, is that having that added intoxicant is not going to allow you to be able to have full awareness and control of what you automatically have been doing for the past 20 some odd, 30 some odd years of your life. Like, these are conditioned things here. Like, we got a great program here, but I have to tell my guys at the end, like, please don't think this is like your college course and you graduated and you go home with life kind of deal. Like, this is a process you got to keep going. 10 weeks won't erase, 30 years of you doing the wrong thing. It gets you the tools and gets you a great platform and groundwork so you can go ahead and keep running, right? But you have to be aware enough to say that, you know what, a couple drinks, and again, during the holiday season, men, stay away from the intoxicants, especially if this is a highly triggering moment for you.
You've got to know your limitations. And it doesn't make you weak. It makes you weak when you don't honor those limitations. It's not, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. And let me say, get rid of that word can't, guys. Throw that word out of your vocabulary. I've done this podcast before. I'm going to do another one on the difference between I can't do that versus I don't do that. Versus I don't do that. So very, very important distinction. One emotes, connotates denial. One is like a rejection is, oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm a bad boy. I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't do it. I don't do it. Well, that's a whole different ball game. I don't do it emotes power, strength, courage, resourcefulness, awareness. Exactly.
I love that.
So important. Is your video on, brother?
Yeah, give me one. I had to just real quick grab one thing and didn't want it to.
Nope, you got it. So, going into the holidays, what do you want to create, right? We talked about that. Principle number one. Number two is, what have been the risks in the past? What are the bad things that have happened to you in holidays in the past? And what specifically do you want to prevent from that thing happening again? And what are you going to do about it, right? And then George talked about finding that safe place. What are the positive things? Who do you want to connect with? What do you want to share? Are you prepared, particularly if you're, listening to this podcast? There's a chance that you may be in this place where you recently have been discovered for your compulsive sexual behavior. And depending upon your family situation, the sister knows, the brother-in-law knows, the auntie knows, the grandma knows, like everybody's different, but that, how are you going to respond to the questions if they come up? Like, you got to be prepared, guys, because while holidays are nice, if we measure them by their potential detrimental impact, you are in crisis management mode. Absolutely. And I don't mean to be a Scrooge, right? George and we're not trying to be Scrooges here, guys. Like, oh, it's crisis. But if you define crisis in the sense of the level of disruption from your normal day-to-day, well.
And you know what? We should leave it at that. You don't even lessen that. Let it be
fine.
Crisis. And again, we have a nation, a world that I believe, again, aside from people with a compulsive addiction, are simply just underperforming. Like, we were all looking to be able to have that kind of, change. And that leads to the final parts, moving in about what I asked my men to do, is that now it's just time. Once I asked them to kind of do what I quote unquote call the easy stuff, like, men, identifying your triggers, knowing your thoughts, trust me, that's some of the easy work. The hard work now is going to come into what's the action that we're going to be doing that will start generating the real thoughts and feelings that I want to be able to maintain long term, right? How do I do this long term? And that was the last piece that I actually told my men, is that this is your time, because normally what we have is a 3-part series that happens right now. Again, particularly if you're dealing with compulsive behavior, you're dealing with Thanksgiving, family, Christmas, family, and then it comes to you for what? That almighty New Year's resolution. And again, if you got a compulsive addiction, more than likely, you've been at this doorstep more than once, making the exact same resolution, which also is going to probably put you in another horrible state of thinking like, dang, it's another year where I'm going into it and I'm still doing the same old thing right now. My life ain't changed. In fact, my life just got worse. Now 2019 is worse. Not only did I have the holiday season that was so, horrible and put me in such a crisis place, but now I'm at the beginning of the year and I'm still doing this thing right now, or I haven't progressed past this mark in my life right now. And right now is the time where I ask them, I need you to do two important things. 1A is that I need you to create some real kick-ass goals. One of the things that I've come to learn, and we talk about this a lot. This is one of this is the tagline for the mindful habit. In order to make a habit, you got to break a habit. But I'm gonna ask the men that's listening on the call to go a little bit deeper. And I want you to realize that your addiction has not just been a habit, it's been a lifestyle. So if you want to change that lifestyle, if you want to break that lifestyle, now you got to do what? You got to make a lifestyle. So again, it means everything has to change. I tell my men, I'm like, hey guys, listen, don't tell me that it's just about, you wanting to get rid of the compulsive behavior. I had a call with guys just this past, today's Monday. It was just yesterday on a group call with them. And they were talking about New Year's resolutions. And the majority of not all of them came out and said, yep, I just want to be porn free. And I said, that's an absolute lie. You just don't know it. I said, the reality of it is that if you have a porn habit right now, you probably have a horrible diet. If you got a porn habit right now, you probably got a horrible sleep pattern. You probably got a horrible way of working out and doing physical exercise for your body. You probably haven't engaged in any of your hobbies in the longest time. And instead of being in front of a computer or oogling and objectifying women, you probably have been connected spiritually in a negative way, wondering why you're being punished instead of enjoying whatever the fruits of your spirituality as you define it can bring you. This isn't just about saying, okay, let me pluck out the porn and I'm going to insert a book. Can't be that, man.
No. And George,
change.
Yeah, this is my favorite statistic. The number of men that I've worked with over the course of the past 7 years who primarily had a sex or a porn problem. For those of you who've been listening to this podcast for a while, know the answer. The number of men that I've worked over the course of the past 7 years that primarily, number one, this means their number one problem was related to sex or porn is zero. Zero, brothers and sisters listening, zero. The behavior is the symptom. The behavior is the symptom. Now, all of them had sex and porn problems, but it's not the problem. And that's the important point that George is trying to make. And when you just say, I don't want to do something, you're less than halfway there, because you've just given information on one side of the equation. I don't want to do something. Okay. There's no thought in that declaration, right, George, on what it is in fact you want to do because of the golden rules. Give it to us again one more time.
To make a habit, you must make a habit.
To break a habit, you must make a habit. That's real, guys. That's real. And so many of you are stuck obsessively focusing on what you don't want to do. And by the way, what George is talking about, these calls that he's talking about, in our group coaching program, we do 7 calls per week. 7 calls per week. An intense boot camp styled recovery program where we are in your face and we are pushing you and we are driving you and we're reviewing your assignments and calling you on your BS in a kind, compassionate, loving way. So you guys heard him talking about the calls. I just wanted to share with you what those calls actually are. So let's bring it back to Habitland, George, because we're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes. And I think we've given some good information to help people to begin shifting their thinking about what they want to accomplish. And I love what you talked about going into the New Year's. Like, let that start now. Don't just on December 31st. This is what I want to stop doing. Start thinking about, what do you want to create for yourself in 2019? By the end of 2019, what do you want to look back and say, damn it, I am so proud over what I accomplished?
An interesting statistic that I came across, man. out of the top, Fortune 500 companies, people that own their own enterprises, exist within that top, 10 to 1%. Do you know how many of them have a New Year's resolution?
I bet. Listen, I know it's a curveball question. I'm just going to say I don't know. Where's it going?
They said none of them reported having New Year's resolutions. The only thing they stated was that I want to enhance this area or this skill set.
Yeah.
So in other words,
so
every area of their life, like they never went into these guys. And again, we're talking about the real performers right now. I'm not talking about the guy that won the lottery kind of deal and made it look good or whatever. But if you really take a look at these men and women who exist in this area, right, this like top 10%, well, they all look a certain way for a certain reason. I used to think that, you know what, I can't be fit until I make money. No, that's not the case. They operated them all at the same time. They didn't take time off from their health to pursue the business. They knew that the health was important. Everything had to move. And what I'm saying is that they knew early on that it's not about just saying, I got to learn everything in this one area to make this the habit. They knew they had to make a lifestyle, like a lifestyle that was going to consistently grow with them, in that process, man. So that was the lessons when Mitch, like, when we look at these areas, again, I don't want people to think that, we're kind of just slamming down hard on our brothers and sisters that just happen to be on the call with a compulsive habit. Like, these are some techniques that, again, work across. That's why I love the mindful habit. This is probably what I tell guys all the time on our onboarding calls. This is probably the most undercover personal development program you are going to come across. Like, we don't just have a section about where you get rid of your porn habit and then it's goodbye. If we did that, we wouldn't give you guys a 187-page workbook, and it would be whittled down to a couple sections. And we say, hey, here you go, on your way. But no, now we want to take a look at your lifestyle. We always wrap it up with their lifestyle. How are you great? What's the crap in your life right now? What's the opportunity that's going to be able to come out of that kind of stuff right now? So, all those pieces, man. And again, that's what helped me to be able to produce, Habitland, being able to work with the men that work within the mindful habit, under your leadership, your mentorship, and also reflecting in these other areas. It wasn't about an autobiography that was going to be a George-centered thing. The more I looked around, I was like, you know what? Everybody needs this information. Wives need to know if you're a partner, if you are a child, if you wonder if you're a good friend, and you're like, man, I think he has a problem, but he's in full denial mode. What is exactly happening with him? I don't know what's happening with him right now. Get Habitland, because then you'll be able to read. You'll be able to look in. It's broken down into 3 great sections for you. It's a small, easy read book. It's just like having a conversation with a good friend. And it's just about the entry, the residency, and the exodus. And in the entry, you're going to learn all about how a habit develops, what a habit is, how do habits take hold and take root, why I pursue this habit over another habit. Why is my husband viewing porn instead of going out to the gym or building his business that he's always talked about? You're going to learn in residency how, we're consumed with these thoughts, these what I call the 4 deadly thoughts. You're going to hear about the triple E's that I've talked about already, where it's like we have the emotions, the ego, and the experiences, and then we have these horrible thoughts that tend to follow it that lead us into the actions that people see. Not the actions that we want to be displayed, but it's the actions that we end up seeing. And then in Exodus, you'll be able to hear how, in a combination of a couple tools there, everything from being able to have a TRP to understanding, mindfulness, and being able to channel all that to say, okay, how do I really create the action moving forward now that'll give me the lifestyle that I desire?
Yeah, I don't know about you, George. We've been in this space for a while now, and I'm getting a little tired of self-help books because I don't need to hear another platitude. I get it. Guys, it's all cliches. There's like 10 universal truths that you need to know. Like, that's it. That's it. That's all you got to do.
That's it.
Implementing, execution, and how you do it. And what I love about this book, number one, is that this book applies to everybody. This is not limited to men or women, for that matter, struggling with compulsive sexual behavior. It's not, this applies, and that's why our program has been so successful for the right man. And I say the right man because that connection to me, to you, to the material impacts efficacy. So we're always trying to weed people out, and we're trying to bring people in. We're excluding as much as we're including. And I've learned that over the years. But if you want a practical, easy, fun, enriching read on a place where we all spend time, where we all live in Habitland, and you want to learn how to create your exodus. Love that word in this context, brother. Love it. It's so cool. How to practically get out, then you need to read this book. George, where can people find the book?
Real easy, guys. Habitland is available on Amazon. Go there, self-help section, addiction section, or just go and type in the queue. I promise you, I've done it 100 times. You only have two things that'll pop up. It'll be a record and it'll be a book. Habitland is there for you guys. And by the way, just want to let you guys know, if you guys have looked at it before, the price has been drastically reduced for you guys over the holiday season. It's only $9.99. It's $10 for the book. Like I said, it's a great read, not only if you're the addict, but again, as I did this work, and because of me just in working now working more with partners, I really wanted to make sure that this is going to be a work that can come out that, as Craig said, everybody can get something from. You know, I've had people that haven't even had a connection with it, but they've always been able to find something positive to come out of it. So again, thank you guys for your time. Craig, thank you so much for your time, brother. Habitland's at Amazon.
Well, listen, George is going to be back with us coming up in a few weeks. You're going to be seeing more of my incredible team that we have on the Mindful Habit coaching team. We have a group coaching program. So you want to, we're talking about New Year's resolutions. If you want to finally put this problem to bed and you finally want to learn practically how to do it and allow those lessons to impact every area of your life, go to the website, themindfulhabit.com. Check out our group coaching program. And at a minimum, seriously, guys, gals, buy the book, Habitland, on Amazon.com. It's necessary information that we weren't taught. There's no school and there's no class on habits, yet habits literally control our lives. And speaking of habits, I want to thank you, George, for joining me here today. And I want to tell all you brothers and sisters out there to keep feeding the right wolf, right? We got these two wolves inside us. I want you to feed the right one, and I'll catch you all next week. Embrace your power of choice. See you later. Bye.
Have a great one, brothers.